management plan was prepared, an easement registered across County of Bruce lands, and a site plan control agreement executed between the municipality and the proponent, which included provision of fencing abutting the neighboring lands. The proponent in this case has now fulfilled all of those conditions. They have provided a stormwater management plan to both the municipality. It has been reviewed by the municipal engineer and has been deemed satisfactory to both Brockton and the County of Bruce. The stormwater management strategy has met current provincial and municipal standards. Based on the report and discussions between the proponent, the municipality, and the county, it was ultimately determined that an easement was not required across County of Bruce lands. And the final requirement, a site plan control agreement and a development agreement, were executed between the municipality of Brockton and the proponent, which included both the final stormwater management plan, as well as provision of a cedar hedge in the form of a fence abutting all of the adjacent neighboring lands, excluding those that are adjacent to the unopened road allowance and the actual road. Confirmation that those matters were addressed was provided by the clerk, Fiona, on June 1st, 2020. And so based on the above, the requirements of the holding have been fulfilled. And it's just for council's notification that there are no appeal rights associated with the holding removal. In my opinion, the application in this case is consistent with the provincial policy statement and conforms to the county plan and the local plan, and is representative of good land use planning. And so I recommend the removal occur.
Okay, thank you very much for your report. I'll read the motion and then ask for any questions from the members of council. Moved by Deputy Mayor Gierczak, seconded by Councillor Hutchin, that the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Brockton is considered and hereby accepts the planning report prepared by Karina Smith, Bruce County Planner, dated July 14, 2020, and entitled Municipality of Brockton Planning Report, and further that the council approves removing the holding symbol from the property currently zoned R2 8H residential low density multiple special with holding because the proponent 2369906 area limited file number Z44419.36 the holding, and further authorizes a site specific bylaw coming forward. Are there any questions from council? Councillor Adams.
Just not a question, Mayor Peabody. I just wanted to make a comment. I think it's wonderful. This seems to be the last piece for the townhouses. And I just think it's wonderful that we're moving forward with these much needed townhouses. And I think it shows confidence in Brockton. And it's also wonderful that we've got entrepreneurs in the community ready to go ahead. So I'm very pleased that we're moving forward with this. I think it's wonderful.
Yes, thank you for those kind comments for the community and the developer. Councillor Elphick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the notes that I had on this file was regarding the easement, and I had raised the question around walkability and connecting into the adjacent lands. We looked at JDR and then the County of Bruce, and it was mentioned in an earlier meeting that the easement may have allowed for individuals to go from the Crawford Street development onto County of Bruce lands and connect to the sidewalk network there and move their way towards Yonge Street. Given this report does no longer require the easement, I'm wondering if that still exists or if that's been a consideration.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Peabody, what my understanding is that discussions on a potential trail connection have been occurring separately because it wasn't a requirement specifically for the trail as part of the original zoning application. It wasn't considered in the holding removal, but my understanding is that, like I said, those discussions are continuing to happen as to whether or not that option to connect across county lands is viable or if there's alternative routes that could be utilized.
Okay, thank you for that information. Are there any further questions? Okay, seeing none, I have the motion. Read the motion. All those in favor of the motion? Okay, motion is carried. All right, thank you very much. So that concludes our planning report, public meeting. So thank you very much, Ms. Smith. Okay, moving along to item 4, the delegations. Okay, So we have a delegation with Ms. Thompson and Ms. Thomas, and they have a George Street speed bump petition to present to council. So there they are. Nice summer evening that it
Hi.
is.
Can you hear us?
Yep, we can hear you now.
Perfect.
Okay.
So 3 years ago, I approached Councillor Adams about the issue of speeding on our street. At the time, police service boards got involved and nothing was really done. We were told that the speed radar would be put on the street and heavier police presence would be here, and nothing happened. Last year I talked to Kim about the issue, and we talked about the black cat box being put on the street. It has not happened. We still have major issues with people speeding up and down the street. There's 13 kids on the street. So, and not only that, but there's also people that use the street for walking down to the trail for the river. I had everybody sign a petition. I have somebody from every household who is in favor of having a speed bump put on the street.
And with
Okay.
the new complex that's going to be going in at the end of Orange Street, I'm not exactly sure the number of units, but there'll be that many more vehicles that access our street to get to the end of to get to the highway. It is a very short street, but for whatever reason, people feel the need to accelerate from one end to the other. And it is a hazard, and it's frightening to see some days.
Okay, so you got the Orange Street Apartments up there. So that's that'll be 20 units up there, and then Mr. Weaver's putting in 10 plus his existing 2. So that'd be
Yeah.
that's the number of units.
We also have our road dug up right now from a water main break. So they need to come and pave it anyway.
Well, you've already got a speed bump that we put in there for you last week then.
Except it's not working.
Oh, it's not working.
It's on one side. It's only half of the road is torn up. So now they're just going on the opposite side of the road and just giving her on that side.
Even faster.
But since
Okay.
it's not having to pave anyway.
Mayor Peabody, I know you can't hear me or can't see me. You can hear me
Go
though.
ahead. Councillor Lang, go ahead with the question. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
So, and thanks for coming on and expressing your concern for this. I remember when this first came, when Steve and I were on the police board together. I remember when the concern came up from George Street, and the black cat device that you're speaking of was quite new to us at that time too. And I know, I don't know if, and maybe Greg can correct me and Steve on if we got any data from that. I know we had moved the black cat around quite a bit, and but anyways, it doesn't matter at this point. Sorry for the noise here in the background, but we do have the tool of the movable speed bumps, and I'm open to the option as council to take it there. I know where they're located right now. I know there's a lot of concern that maybe the speed bumps aren't as effective in the place they are right now. But again, from data that came from that street, they are effective. So there's a lot of moving parts in this, but I think it's certainly of a discussion to be moved, especially with what's happening in your area right now with construction and to your point with kids, and right now with kids being home from school, there's a lot more activity of them being out and not being occupied. So I think it's a great discussion. I appreciate bringing it forward again, but I would like to, maybe Steve, you can speak to that. I can't remember. Did we get some data from that street?
No, I don't believe we did. As you know, James, we've had difficulties with the machine. We actually had Speed Spy first. And I think,
Okay.
I'm not sure if there was Speed Spy information come back. Our new machine, Black Cat, we do have a list, and we can certainly put this on the list and move the priorities around for it. So I really believe that we need to do that, because Black Cat gives is much better tool than the one that ended up being stolen, the Speed Spy. But it actually gives volumes, it gives speeds, it gives the size of vehicles. It doesn't do any plating, obviously, so there's no concern from a privacy standpoint. But it also monitors both sides of the street where Speed Spy didn't. And I'm just going to go back. I actually mentioned this to Kim, had brought it up as well back in May. And I had, back a couple of years ago, as was mentioned, I had asked the member on the Police Services Board then to take a look at it. And I've got the information here, and I shared it with Kim and Greg. They did a 2-week focus patrol on Orange and on George Streets in the fall of 2016. And they didn't seem to find any particular issues. But when you live there, you know there are issues. So that's why I think it's really important to get the Black Cat in. We can take a look at it. I'm not so sure at this point that we would move the speed humps. James, you had mentioned you were on Police Services when we bought the speed humps. We bought the low speed humps, and we've had a lot of concern about those speed humps. So I'm not sure. We've got one set in Brockton. Right now they're on Rideout Street. We're going to have a discussion about that shortly, but there may be other speed calming ideas and tools that we need to look at too. Certainly we've only got the one set of speed humps right now. And I guess my concern would be if you put them on George Street, is that going to force traffic onto other streets without them? Because most people do not like the speed humps, especially if you have a low vehicle, but you can actually, it's jolting when you go over them. So I'm not sure. I mean, we did it as a bit of a trial, and I'm not sure if that was super successful or not. Council needs to talk about that, I guess. But we need to do something to help the folks in George Street as much as we can. And I think the first piece is to get some data so we understand, and better still, the OPP understand what they need to deal with in terms of timing, in terms of speeds, and in terms of volume. So that's my thought on it.
Okay, any other discussion from council? Anybody else? Councillor Elphick?
I just wanted to add through you, Mr. Mayor, that I appreciate you coming forward and raising the concerns. One question I had was about recent reports to the OPP that service our community. Have any of the members joining the call tonight made standalone reports to the OPP regarding the speed?
No.
Okay. And the other question I had was about signage. We'll certainly deal with the road itself, but the signage, signs, caution, kid playing, that type of thing. Is there sufficient signage along the street to caution drivers?
Definitely not.
No,
So,
there's none.
even if we could do a community safety zone and drop the speed limit to 40.
I'm guessing it's some degree of a designation of a construction zone right now, given the ongoing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's been for a couple years.
I think in the interim, the Black Cat, despite it being a great tool for us to use, that it will take council some time to collect the data and to make a decision. And I'm wondering to support these residents on their street if there's a way of having some sort of temporary markers or temporary signage erected on the street to caution drivers to be more mindful as they're moving to and from that roadway. And then, certainly council can give it further consideration because it will likely be the fall before we're able to make an informed decision and collect the data. And in the meantime, I would certainly encourage the residents on George Street to contact the non-emergency number of the OPP and make reports each time that there are speeds because they do track the data. They're very analytical these days, and it will ensure that officers are assigned at the times when those incidents are occurring. But thank you again for coming forward, and we're certainly mindful of the issue, and we'll do our best to assist.
Okay, thank you. Very succinct summary, Councillor Elphick. Deputy Mayor Gierzak.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Fortney, what is the process to establish this area as a community safety zone? I don't recall having gone through that process before. Is it as simple as getting some of this data and then having a recommendation from the police, or how would we go about making that commitment to a community safety zone?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Deputy Mayor Gierzak, I do believe there is a data component to look at, but I have not been through the process myself, so I would definitely have to come back to council with some sort of recommendation.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any further questions from council? Councillor Elphick.
Yeah, and perhaps earlier, Mr. Mayor, I should have asked, but through you to Director Fortney, is there a capacity to erect some signage, more visibility about ensuring drivers are slowing down? Do we have the capacity in the municipality to do that rather quickly? I don't see any harm doing that. Residents on the street have brought forward a concern, and I think that council should implement some temporary measures at the very least to see what we can do to reduce speeds.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we can certainly put up temporary signage. We don't have any signage per se that says slow down, but we can put up some tiger tails and put them on a stand with some sandbags to kind of alert travelers of the to slow down, but they would only merely be temporary.
Yeah, and I appreciate they're temporary, and I just think anything we can do, Bruce Road 22, as you're rounding the bend there, they have their speed signs now directly in the center of the roadway, and it certainly catches your attention heading into the west side there of the Fort Junction. So, I just would think something that we could do as municipalities, an interim measure, anything we can do to certainly caution drivers would be very much appreciated from my perspective.
Okay, Councillor Hutchin.
I don't know if we should really be putting signs up on one street. All the streets that have children should have these signs. So that isn't going to really solve the problem. I would like to see the Black Cat put up there as soon as possible to collect the data. And then once we've decided what we're going to do with Rideout, if we actually put a permanent speed bump there, then we would take the portable ones and perhaps put them on George Street.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So to summarize things for the residents of George Street, we do have a motion coming forward to put the Black Cat up on your street later in the meeting to gather that data. We have some requests from council to look at increased signage regarding community safety zone, as well as other types of signs. So we will ask our Director of Operations, Mr. Fernie, to bring back a report to the next meeting on those additional measures. And based on the Black Cat data, we'll make some decisions. As Councillor Elphick said, for the fall, if we did choose to do speed bumps, for example, or lower the speed limit to 40, we would have to publish that in the Brockton Buzz. There's a process that you have started tonight by coming out with your delegation. So thank you very much for attending the council meeting. It's great to see citizens get involved in council and come forward with their concerns and present them so that we can try to serve the community better. Thank you very much. That's the process. So Ms. Thompson, if you have any further questions after the meeting, you can message me and I'll explain how things are moving along.
Okay. Yeah.
And if you want, message me. But,
Okay.
and you can stay on and watch the meeting. It's but the Black Cat, it's item 7.4. So later on in the meeting, a few minutes in the meeting. So there's nothing else. That concludes our delegation. Thank you very much. Okay, we have the council minutes from last meeting, moved by Councillor Adams, second by Councillor Lifeso, that the Council of Municipality of Brockton adopts the minutes of the June 23rd, 2020 council meeting as presented. All those in favor? Okay, that's carried. Okay, moving on to, was there any business arising from the minutes? Any questions people had from the June 23rd meeting? Okay, moving along to business arising from the minutes, moved by Councillor Hutchin, seconded by Deputy Mayor Gierzak. Whereas the FCM issued a report entitled Protecting Vital Municipal Services on April 23rd, 2020, which included recommendations to the federal government to provide financial assistance for municipalities across the country. And whereas the AMO recognizes that a collaborative federal provincial effort is required to provide much needed financial assistance to municipalities, and their May 14th, 2020 letter to the Prime Minister and Premier urges Canada and Ontario to extend their successful collaboration through financial support for municipalities. Be it resolved that the municipality of Brockton's FCM recommendation requests that both the federal and provincial governments establish a municipal financial assistance program to offset the financial impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. And further, that the municipality of Brockton supports the MO in lobbying the provincial government for financial assistance to support municipalities in offsetting the impact of COVID-19. And that this be forwarded to the Honorable Steve Clark, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, MP Ben Lobb, MPP Lisa Thompson, FCM, AMO, and its member municipalities, and the town of Bracebridge. So just an update on that. Last Thursday, the Premier and Steve Clark, Minister Clark, held a conference call with the mayors, and the part of the call was about the omnibus bill that they've tabled, the Recovery Act. But the Premier began the call by urging all of the mayors and councils to get behind him. He has been negotiating with the federal government on this very type of motion, and Ontario is getting shortchanged on its prorated per capita share nationally by the federal government. So Premier Ford asked us all to join in. He's fighting for the municipalities, but he needs a little bit more money coming forward from the federal side. So that was just a little update from last Thursday. Okay, so we have the motion before us. All those in favor? Okay, motion is carried. Okay, on to reports. Moved by Councillor Adams, second by Councillor Elphick. The Council of Brockton hereby receives report number BLDG 2022 Building Permit Summary Report January to June, prepared by Ray Holiday, CBO, for information purposes. Okay, so any questions for Mr. Holiday? Oh, some good news there. The numbers pretty even with last year. The ag sector does seem to be down, but housing sector up. So hopefully we'll get a little bit of rush on permits in the summer, and we can beat last year's record total. Councillor Adams. You're on mute.
Sorry. Yep. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, just wanted to again. I'll call it the cheerleader section, I guess, but really good to see. I mean, 10% increase in the number of permits and value residentially. We're seeing some very good growth even through COVID. So that's really good. And the last comment I love to hear was we're diligently supporting the development. And I'll just leave it at that. I think that's what our residents expect. That's what council expects. And so that's really good that staff is doing that. And I love that line, diligently supporting the development.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Adams. That's great, great news on the building permit side. So thank you, Mr. Holiday, for that timely report. Okay, all those in favor of accepting the report? Carried. Wastewater maintenance, moved by Councillor Hutchins, second by Councillor Lyso. The Council of Brockton hereby receives report number UT 2029, June 2020 water and wastewater maintenance report prepared by Greg Fertney, Director of Operations, for information purposes. Are there any questions on that report? All those in favor? Carried. Rideout Street, moved by Councillor Adams, second by Councillor Elphick, that the Council of Brockton hereby receives report number PW 2020-18 Rideout Street speed bumps prepared by Greg Fertney, Director of Operations, for information purposes, and request direction from Council on how to move forward given the resident complaint. Okay, so I brought this up at the last meeting. I asked people to, if they could, to read the report and check out the situation up there. The having visited that street quite a bit lately because of the speed bumps, as well as the new subdivision. It is quite a busy street. It's a major collector street now for Walkerton. Okay, are there any questions about the report? Any comments? Councillor Elphick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have received two inquiries, or two concerned citizens in the area that have direct concern with the current placement of the speed hump, and also the overall intended purpose of it being there to reduce speed along Rideout Street. It doesn't seem to be accomplished with it being there. The concern still remains that there are cars moving very quickly between the Thomas Street, the Upper Thomas and the Lower Thomas corridor along Rideout Street, along that bend that exists in the roadway. And it certainly seems that despite the speed bumps being there, that cars are still quickly accelerating northbound down Rideout Street. So the report was very well done. It was very detailed. I did some further research on it as I was not on council at the time. I noted a couple things about the amount that there were about 30% of the traffic that was captured by the data was noted to be above the speed limit, but that it was the will of council back in May of 2019 to conduct a 1-year trial and to have a report back and to compare the results. Right now, we don't have any comparison data, despite the anecdotal data that's coming forward from residents living along that street. So I would certainly support option B, that we leave the speed humps in place for the current time, because the installation costs have already been done this year. We're not going to be able to recover those. But certainly give some direction to staff, perhaps not to immediately reinstall it, allow council to give some direction at a later point about what's to happen. I don't think we should be rushing to install it in the spring of 2021 by any means, given the feedback from residents. And look at what other options might be available to us to bring the speed down. But in my research as well, Rideout Street is doing exactly what the town of Walkerton and subsequently the municipality have designed it to do. It was designed as a secondary corridor street where the smaller side streets funnel towards Rideout to go to the arterial streets of Yonge and to the highway. So it's important that we keep traffic flowing along that roadway. Stop signs certainly are an option if we can't control traffic through some other means. But I think right now it's to look at what other options might exist for council to consider. And the roadway's already damaged as well. So because it's been installed and something, I think I read 200 plus lag bolts into the roadway. So certainly the water will get in there and heave over the winter as well. So we're already have a damaged piece of roadway because of the speed humps being there, and I'm not supportive of moving it to another spot on Rideout without some further traffic data. So just to summarize, I'm in support of option B, and further to that, asking that we do what we can to have some black cat data collected over the next couple of weeks and months as well.
Yes, I believe that we lost Mayor Peabody momentarily, but I believe he's logging back on. I've promoted him to a panelist again, and hopefully we will have our chair back momentarily.
Yeah, the internet cut right out there. Okay.
Thought you'd gone over a speed bump.
What it felt like, yeah. Okay. So did you take over, Dan?
No, I didn't. Your name didn't show up on the phone call, so I didn't pick up.
Okay. All right. Okay, James, you had a point?
Yeah, I'm not sure through you, Mayor Peabody, how much you caught of what Tim was saying, but he made a lot of valid points on his position with the speed humps, and I'll back it up, and Steve can bounce on this too. When I was part of the police services board my first year on council, we talked a lot about the speed humps and possibly being a tool to make Rideout a little safer, because even prior to even me being on council, there was a lot of residents along that street that wanted some type of tool to slow things down. And so we thought this was a solution based on what Hanover had done. Now, mind you, Hanover had gone through it and gotten some information that maybe didn't work for them, and then they went to next stage. And Greg was relatively new to us from the municipality when this all first started out. So, maybe speed humps to him and the amount of work, and like Tim spoke to how much damage maybe to the road that we didn't know going into this prior to. Rideout is a concern. There's people that fly by there. I have my in-laws don't live too far from there. I have good friends that live along that street. People speed on that street, and it is a concern. And police do they do patrol that street. We do have EMS that travel that street. It's not a space where our fire would really be a concern, but it is a street that people do speed on. So are the speed bumps effective? I don't know. I've driven over them and you slow down, but it's how quick maybe you accelerate after that. I don't know. Are they the best tool? I don't know. Are there better ones? Probably. So we need to look at that. I'm supporting option B. I was a big advocate of the speed humps based on what information came out of Hanover, but Hanover, they shifted from that. And we need to do something on that street, whether we look at the north intersection that comes from, geez, Tim, help me with that street that comes around.
Thomas?
Not Thomas, the one south of that. Is it Short Street? Short Street that comes, yeah.
Lower Thomas?
Yeah, there's Thomas, and then Steve, there's Short Street that comes and then turns up in just from Centennial.
Yeah.
So whether we do some research on a stop sign at that point, I don't know. We got to do something on that street to slow people down. Maybe the humps aren't working because I think they're maybe making people more upset than doing benefit. But there are residents on that street when you go south closer to McGivern that are not happy with the speed from Short to that location. So when you come along that low point, we have to do something. If the speed humps aren't working, I know they're working from a slowdown standpoint, but are they working from a community happiness? I don't know. So we as a council, me as an advocate of them, maybe they're not working, but they are a tool that we can use maybe elsewhere. The traffic does need to slow down there though, for sure.
Absolutely. Okay, Councillor Adams.
Yeah, this is probably a good time, James. We did spend a good bit of time at Police Services Board when you were on and talking about this, and I probably good we only bought the one set of speed humps at this point. I do agree with option B as well. I want to show you here very quickly, and I don't know how well it'll play out with the camera, but that actually is the report from Black Cat. And what it tells us is, and this is the kind of data that we get, and this is what the police can work with, this is what tells us as counselors, this was Black Cat done from March 21st to March 29th, 19, one of our first ones done. And there were cars doing over, the max is over 80. And there were numerous inputs here where cars were doing over 80 kilometers an hour before we put that in. I think, Tim, you were interested in information. Well, how many people were speeding? This report gives it by breakdown by 5 kilometer increments. And it's pretty detailed. And it tells you how many times people have been exceeding the speed limit. And especially when you get to the 71 to 75 kilometer, all the way up over 80 kilometer range. So that's the benefit of that tool. And it'll be the benefit at George Street too, to tell us how fast people are actually going. So I think I agree with Greg's report. I think option B at this point, we need to, it's our number one concern expressed to the Police Services Board. James, Tim, you know that, and we got to keep working at it. And we need people, above all of the enforcement, above all of the tools we buy, to respect their neighbors and slow down before somebody gets hurt. I know that's wishful thinking, I guess, in the big scheme of things, but we really do need people to respect their neighbors and drive reasonably and safely.
Okay, all right, so we have 2 people suggesting option B in the report. Are there any further comments? Okay,
maybe just one more, Chris, if you don't mind, or through you, Mayor Peabody, just again, as an advocate of these speed humps, I think they are a great tool in the right spot. And I understand, and we're learning of the damage of our roads. So I don't want to see them go away. I think maybe there are areas in town that we can use them without causing too much damage. Maybe Ride Out, as we're learning, isn't the best location, but I think they are a good tool for us. And as we're learning, and other municipalities are using different options, as you can, when you go through the town of Fordwich, for example, and when you take not the bypass towards 10 Ford Junction, they have these units that are in the middle of the road. I think there are other options out there that might be a little more feasible, but at the end of the day, it's about like Steve said, community safety and making sure people are slowing down. That's the big thing.
Okay, Councillor Hutchin.
I'd like some more information about a possible stop sign at Short. I know when I've spoken to John Strader in the past, they're not supposed to use stop signs to control traffic, but we have to do something. And then that would free up the speed bump to put on George Street once we get all the appropriate data.
Okay, good point. Deputy Mayor Gierzak?
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess taking a look at the amount of building that is going on in town, this problem is probably going to continue to get worse. So I think we do have to think about continuing to gather information and think about long-term solutions. Because whatever we find is a solution over the next 12 months may not be the solution for the next 24 to 36 months as some of those homes go in. The traffic is going to continue to increase. I would anticipate for the next 5 or 10 years. So I would encourage our roads people to think longer term. So we've got some maybe short-term solutions, but also long-term. What does that mean if traffic doubles from what it currently is? Anyway, that's my input, and I certainly support option B at this point.
Yeah, excellent point, Deputy Mayor. That certainly needs to be a priority because it is becoming a major collector road, and it certainly isn't built for that. And the outlet on Walker West onto County Road 2 will not be going in until phase 2. It's probably 5 years down the road. All that traffic will be coming that, half of that traffic will be coming that way. And there are, there could be 20 houses going in there this year. There is big demand. I was talking to the developer in phase 1. So there's 3 foundations there now. So things are really coming along. Okay, so we'll write option B in and then I'll call the vote. So all those in favor of option B in Mr. Fernie's report? Okay, thank you. Okay, George Street. Moved by Deputy Mayor Gierzak, seconded by Councillor Hutchin. Council, Ms. Polly Brogdon hereby receives report number PW 2020-19 George Street speed hump request prepared by Greg Fernie for information purposes. And in doing so, I direct staff to collect speeding data using the Black Cat radar system when the construction on George Street has been completed. So we've discussed this one with our delegation. So all those in favor? Okay.
Sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
I just had a question about if there's a way that we could include as part of that motion, though, to put some temporary signage on George Street as well, just as an interim measure. Just because we realistically are going to need 2 months, if not more, to get the data, to get the machine up and running for council to consider it for it to be analyzed. And I heard Councillor Hutchin's comment earlier about the about signage everywhere, and I respect that, but we have a delegation coming forward from this particular street of residence, and I think that we should do something to redress it in the short term.
Okay. Councillor Hutchin.
I liked Mr. Fertney's suggestion about putting the caution panels where the gravel is right now, and then that will slow them down.
Okay, that's a good idea. Are you able to do that, Mr. Fertney?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely we can.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Bruce County Economic Task Force, Deputy Mayor, moved by Deputy Mayor Gierzak, seconded by Councillor Lyso. That the Council of Brogdon hereby receives report number FIN 2020-24, Bruce County Economic Task Force prepared by Trish Sartori, CFO for information purposes. Okay, are there any questions about that? No. All those in favor? Carried. Brockton financial update. Moved by Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor Elphick, that the Council of Brockton hereby receives report number FIN 2020-25, Brockton financial update as of June 30th, prepared by Trish Sartori, CFO for information purposes. Okay, questions about midpoint state of our finances? Okay, good report, Ms. Sartori. Councillor Elphick.
Just hopefully one easy, quick question. In paragraph 1, it notes that the municipality has waived $31,076 in penalty and interest charges on outstanding taxes. Is that number arrived at based on us extending the period of time from the March and June tax periods, or is that number based on what currently is outstanding? I'm not sure if we can get a response to that.
Through you, Mayor Peabody, that amount is from all of the outstanding taxes from prior years and from extending to the June. So anything that would have been outstanding between April and June.
Okay, thank you, Trish.
All right, thank you. All right, any further questions? Okay, all those in favor? Carried. COVID response. Moved by Deputy Mayor Gierzak, seconded by Councillor Hutchin, that the Council of Municipality of Brockton hereby receives report number CLK 2020-23 COVID municipal response, July 14th, 2020 update prepared by Sarah Johnson, Deputy Junior Clerk, for information purposes, and further confirms and ratifies all operational decisions, procedures, and cancellations put in place by staff and the emergency and control group in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Questions, Deputy Mayor Gierzak.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Peabody, to perhaps Fiona or Sonia. At each of those meetings, we do take minutes, and we haven't passed those minutes for some time, as I recall. I just wondered if there's an intention to share those with council and the general public once those minutes are passed.
Thank you. Ms. Watson.
Sorry, I couldn't get them. Through you, Mayor Peabody, we have had, this is under the Emergency Management Act. Those are records of the meetings, but they're also meeting notes. So there's other third parties, a number of other agencies are part of those discussions, and those aren't public minutes. So those are not intended to be brought to council for adoption. The purpose of these reports that we provide are to bring all of those actions that need ratification by council to council's attention. As you know, some of those discussions are very candid. They're not, you know, in response to the pandemic. So they are not an actual meeting minutes that need to be adopted.
Thank you. That's, as I recall, there certainly are issues that are of an enclosed nature, and as such, it is just the major action items that are brought forward to council. So I appreciate that answer. Thank you.
Yeah. Councillor Adams. Councillor Adams.
Yeah. Yeah, on that point, there has been discussion with that regards, though, that, you know, in terms of the visibility of those discussions. We did express some concern back in March when we started off in our last meeting together in terms of making sure that council was brought up on all of the information. And I know I've asked some questions and I've got some answers that make sense to me, that there is assurance that all the initiatives that have been discussed, I think the emergency task meetings, I think there's about 22 of them based on what the information, and that all of the initiatives have come to council for approval, that there hasn't been anything passed or put through that wasn't given to council for approvals. And I think, you know, again, back in March, we had discussed that, you know, there were certain time elements that we needed to make sure the staff, especially senior staff, had the ability to be able to do those necessary pieces without having to get council back. And even at that point, we didn't even know we'd be able to do videos. So I was glad when I heard, though, that all of the decisions that came from those 22 meetings have come before council. So that's just my spin on that one. I did have another question, though, and it's off that topic. One is childcare. Childcare Center opened July 6th. And I was wondering if anyone could say, I mean, that's a huge piece for Brockton. A lot of people need that childcare, obviously, to get back to work. It's now been open for just over a week. And I'm wondering if someone could speak to the challenges and successes we experienced in that first week.
Hey, Councillor Elphick, they had a daycare committee meeting earlier this week, so maybe as an update for us, go ahead.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly was going to share with council momentarily the successes of the daycare. Certainly, I think kudos to staff, especially our supervisor for daycare and all of our childcare support workers. They have done a remarkable job getting that center opened and putting in control measures to support the families in our community. I was very pleased to hear. Right now, there are rooms that are being used at the St. Teresa School to support the daycare operations, and so certainly that's been helpful that we've been able to access that classroom space. They are, all available PPE is being used. The handoff with parents is good. The communication with parents, we're getting good feedback about that. There was going to be a survey issued that I don't have results for as yet, but there was going to be a canvas done of families at the end of the first week to get feedback from them if there was anything that could be done to improve. So I thought that was an excellent approach. There were some families that opted not to come back, and that mostly had to do with the ability for part-time. And right now we know that full-time placements are being given a priority. Almost all of the staff have been recalled, and I anticipate that we will hear that all of them will be very shortly, given the government's announcement, as the cohort sizes will be increasing at the end of this month from 10 to 15. They continue their ongoing work. We have another childcare meeting coming up on August the 6th, which will certainly be in a better position to give an update. It was also August 6th was picked in hopes with optimism that we would know from the province what the school system will look like, so the daycare can make operational decisions regarding that. And there was an update regarding the expansion project that it is currently anticipated to be completed in November of 2020. So that would be a little bit, I think, behind what may have been anticipated, but certainly we are very happy to see that project moving forward nonetheless.
Okay, thank you very much for the detailed report, and thank you to the staff. Certainly some other communities didn't get up and running so quickly, so it's great news. Ms. Watson?
No, I just, in further to that, I think the only concern that we may run into is because the classrooms aren't open till November, once the school, pending what the school looks like to return in September, we may run into challenges with classrooms come September, October. So looking at that.
Okay, Councillor Elphick.
Just to build off of that, I understand that it may be more of an impact on future admissions as opposed to the current families that we support, is what I understand. But there was an interesting comment made by the government, by the provincial government in their announcement about exploring alternative settings that daycares themselves can't be used to look at other available spaces. So I'm not sure if that's something that staff have turned their minds to at this point, but it was an interesting comment about what other facilities might be able to support childcare in our community.
Well, it's a good idea. We should definitely think about that. Maybe Councillor Lang can meet them down at the fire hall. Twins.
It's a good idea.
Okay. Okay. Any more questions about that? Okay. All those in favor? Okay. Carried. Municipal Innovation Council, moved by Councillor Elphick, signed by Councillor So the Council is probably brought hereby receives report number CEO 2020-13 Municipal Innovation Council update prepared by Sonia Watson, CEO, and in doing so approves Fiona Hamlin Clerk being appointed as the alternate to the CEO as a representative for the municipality of Brockton. Okay. Any questions about the Municipal Innovation Council direction they're headed, projects? Okay. All those in favor? Okay. Carried. Golf for Hospice. Request for a community event moved by Councillor Adams, second by Councillor Elphick, that the Council of Municipality of Brockton hereby proclaims Tuesday, August 11th, 2020 as a community festival day for golf for hospice. So once again, Joe Rise is organizing this. He's informed me that he has a few tee times left. So I informed him, I didn't know how many golfers we have on council, but that I would mention it. I do have, I am going at 7 myself in the morning with my son. But if you still want to golf and contribute to that, that's you can call Joe. Okay, all those in favor?
Before we vote, Mayor, if there's a team to put together, I would certainly join.
Okay, good. We can talk about that.
If there's anybody else, I'd be in. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's always just a lot of fun. Okay, All right, all those in favor? Okay, thank you. It's carried. Information items moved by Deputy Mayor Gierzak. Second, oh, I missed the notification way back there. Public notification, lane closure reminder, Lobby's Bridge repair, Bruce County construction on Bruce Road 3, and notice of construction on the opposite side of the east on Bruce Road 4. There are public notifications. Okay, information moved by Deputy Mayor Gierzak, seconded by Councillor Hutchins, that the Council of Brockton hereby receives all items provided in Section 11 information. Councillor Hutchins.
I just wanted to say I've been traveling back and forth on lobbies, and I'm very pleased to see that they've moved the stop sign away from Durham Street. You can actually get 2 cars there. It's a lot safer. So thank you, Mr. Furtney.
Oh yeah, that took that was a little bit took a little bit of work. So thank you, Mr. Furtney. Okay, information items. All those in favor? Okay, it's carried. Now our bylaws moved by Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor Lyso, that the Council of the Municipality of Brockton authorizes the following bodies to be read and acted, signed, sealed, numbered as followed. 2020-80 holding removal bylaw 2369906 Ontario Limited Z44 19.36. 2020-81 amend appoint committee of adjustment bylaw 2020-82 dog control bylaw. All those in favor? Okay, that motion is carried. Rec committee minutes moved by Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor Elphick, that the Council of the Municipality of Brockton receives the minutes of the following committees and or boards as presented. Rec committee minutes March 4th, 2020. All those in favor?
Your worship, I'd like to bring to your attention that I believe we did skip over item number 9, accounts.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't think I have a motion on accounts. It says here, got a note, the accounts will be presented August 11th. So maybe it's not on yours. That the staff left me a note here. So sorry, I should have mentioned that. Yeah. Okay.
That's great.
Okay, now we are at the business brought forward by councillors, new business. Who would like to go first? Councillor Adams and Councillor Lang.
Just really maybe just for a follow-up. I had brought it up, I think maybe 8 weeks ago or so. We know that there was a potential problem in the arena with permafrost, and COVID, of course, has changed a lot of things in terms of getting reports done and getting people in to look at things. I don't think Mark's maybe on the line, but I'm just wondering if we could get a bit of an update on where that occurred, because probably a lot of that permafrost that we were concerned with heaving the floor of the arena may be done now. So I hope we were able to get a little bit of research on that. So that was one thing. If we can maybe get a bit of an update on that. And also, normally the ice goes in August, and of course hockey gets started and so on. All of those plans are not not formulated as yet, and James would know this. I just got an email on refereeing, and they're still trying to put all of that piece together. So we're a ways away, but I'm just wondering if there's been some thought in terms of when that ice will go in to the community center. For information.
Watson.
Through you, Mayor Peabody, we did discuss that as part of the Business Recovery Committee yesterday, and they have reached out to all user groups. So they're currently trying to understand some of their needs going forward, and then also evaluating other communities' protocols. And so they are in a position to, proceed with the ice as I'm not sure if the normal schedule, but proceed with ice. So they are working on that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lang.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Peabody, a couple items, and the first one kind of being an old item. When I first came onto council prior to, I was on the rec committee, and we had a subcommittee of a rec that started a dog park, and we did a lot of research on Venn Park and being a good location for a small and large dog park prior to the dam being removed. and flooding down in that area. Now it's been a couple years since that area has flooded, and I know last year was kind of or I should say this spring has been a unique year from a flooding standpoint. So maybe it would be a couple years before we get any research in that area. But there's lots of people in our community wondering where we are from a status on a dog park, because I still believe, and our rec committee still believes that we need one, and council, last council and this council are still committed to putting some funds away to make sure that happens. So I would like to see, we haven't met and discussed it a lot as a rec committee because there hasn't been a lot to discuss from a rec standpoint, because obviously a lot of the priorities have shifted due to the COVID-19 from Mark's standpoint and his staff, and making sure our community is up to snuff. But I just wanted to bring it back to council to see if there was some discussion of support that I could take back to our rec committee here in the near future to try and push that forward, to see if Ben Park would be again a location that we could seriously consider for a dog park, that especially in times like this where there are limited park space and people trying to get out to do something. If that's something that we could discuss as council, that I could take back to our committee with some council support. And just the second one's more of a comment. I'll speak hopefully to the dog park with some comments, but still on rec. But I wanted to thank Mark as a representation of CDCF. Mark and his crew sent a team out there to clean up what the CDCF limited volunteers couldn't with the lack of manpower to beautify that park. So I just want to thank Mark and his staff for going out there to do that. But that was my second piece. I just go back to the first one to see what council thinks on a dog park and moving forward with support if possible.
Okay. I guess on the dog park, you'd have to make a notice of motion then on directing council to direct Mark to do a report. So if you want to notice a motion for the next meeting, that's.
Yeah, I think a report was done at one time, Chris, and that was obviously prior to me being on. So if that is need to do, I was just looking for some discussion as council with some support. But I know we have 10,000 tucked away in reserves for that. I'm just hoping that location can be a spot. But not to break the rules, if that's what I need to do, then I'll ask to do so if possible.
Mm-hmm. We can. Bring that forward. The report motion on the in the August meeting. Councillor Hutchins. Okay.
Oh, I just wanted to say I support a dog park. I think it's great. Mm-hmm. We've been talking about it for years.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Deputy Mayor Gierzak, give your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to support that as well. And I was going to ask, and maybe this is what you just covered off, that we recirculate that report that was provided in the past. I'd like to read that again. Certainly there was a lot of support from council to make something happen.
Yeah.
Well, if there is then a consensus tonight, we could ask, I'll have to check holidays, summer, but I could check with staff if there can be a report without the motion on the August meeting to discuss. But given summer holidays, I'm not sure. I'll have to check. Deputy Mayor Gierzak.
Yeah, I would like to see the old report, maybe have a discussion around the old report prior to asking staff to initiate a new one. Yeah.
No, that's a good way to do it. Okay. So we'll have the old report on the August 11th. Can't remember.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Elphick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One item that I had just noted for timelines, I had brought up and raised during the consolidated traffic bylaw discussions, the potential for a crosswalk along Cemetery Road at Hinks to allow pedestrians to cross there with some sort of visible markings. With the Fisher Dairy subdivision increasing in density, noticing some increased traffic flow heading out towards Kincardine Highway. And there had been comments and reports back, generally speaking, but I think the commitment was to bring a report just on that topic forward to council. Since we're in July and approaching September into the school year, if that's in fact how it returns, just wondering if that report could also come forward sooner rather than later. And I know COVID has sent things in a bit of a tailspin, but that's one that's timely, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's good report since hopefully everybody will be back to school in September and it'll be busy up there. So we do need to take those precautions. So good point. Are there any other points to bring forward? Okay, so before we move into camera, I'd like to pay respects to Councillor Rydell, who passed away last week. And he served 2 terms on Brockton Council. And he was a very passionate advocate of many causes. So I remember he got into politics because he was quite concerned about policing in Brockton. And he wanted to ensure that we did maintain our local police, and as did I, but we weren't successful in that fight. But Councillor Rydell went on to serve 2 very good terms on council. So I'd like to pay my respects to his family and honor his memory as a councillor. And we did lower the flag and have a post on our social media last week. So on another note, I just wanted to give people a update on the county. County planning, there was a report from Stantec about the direction to head with planning. One of the key points it advocated was development fees, as well as it had a controversial topic in there that where we would contribute money to the planning department from our budget. So I didn't, of course, I didn't really like that perspective. There were 3 municipalities, Saugeen Shores, myself, and South Bruce Peninsula, that did suggest they wanted to head in a different direction and see more control at the local level for the planning. So with Mayor Charbonneau joining on side, the direction was given to take a look at how it might look going more with the Grey County model of planning. So something coming back on that. I know council's interested in that. On the topic of the nursing home, I know it was in the paper, there was a debate about there's a private management company in there now. They had their contract extended. I voted against that because of the amount of money. It's $138,000 extra. And the company did a great job getting us out of the mess we were in, but I didn't support the contract extension because of that amount of money, which could have been used on other things in long-term care. But yeah, we had 2.5 hours of debate about that, and council did support extending the contract. So in a way, that's that they'll still be administering the home up until March 31st. So that was a big debate. And then the other item that I wanted to share with you was not county, but it did occur through my, I guess it is county, on the health unit board, was the decision to go with the mask order that happened over a period of 2 weeks with Dr. Era. There were several meetings, and because Bruce Grey is so big, there were very divergent views on the mask order. The communities on the coast are the ones that really pushed for the mask order, and I agree with those mayors. They have a lot of visitors coming in from Toronto, and the numbers, we had 111, more than half of them are still from Toronto in the province. So those mayors are very concerned, and especially for their, the shopkeepers on Sauble Beach, they really wanted people wearing masks. Overmorey, Mayor McIver also, Mayor Blue Mountains also. So because it's the Grey Bruce Health Unit, Dr. Era issued an order today, but he was very, gotta commend Dr. Era, he's very good to respect all the concerns of all the different communities and try to work in an order which focuses on the public education side on the wearing of masks. The last thing I want to see, would want to see, is somebody who couldn't afford to wear a mask go to get groceries and get a fine. We saw that earlier in the pandemic, where on other issues, people were given fines in a heavy-handed manner, not in Grey Bruce, but I think the order, if you read it, it does focus on public education. It does focus on the whole issue of equity, about not applying the law unfairly to those who are of lesser means. So the order was released today, and I will be doing a meet with the BIA tomorrow to go over that with our shop owners, as well as I'll do a video tomorrow. There was a campaign going around that you would need to buy there are exemptions in the order. There's a campaign out there that you would need to buy an exemption from a doctor or buy an exemption card. That was going around. That is not true. If somebody needs an exemption, they just have to tell the shop owner they get an exemption, and it's actually illegal to ask, you know, what kind of disability do you have? Let me see your doctor's note. So it is a Dr. It was in the Sun Times. He talked about it not being a heavy-handed approach, and I agree with him. Given the circumstances we're in, I think it's a good public health initiative. So, and hopefully the public health angle will work. And I did, when this was moving forward, I did try to talk to most of you to inform you that this was coming. So if anybody has any questions about that, Councillor Elphick.
There was a notation in Dr. Era's order that Bruce Power had made a donation of a number of masks, over 100,000 masks, and they were going to be distributed to local BIAs and Chamber of Commerce. I'm just wondering if we know the allocation for Brockton and if that will be sufficient to supply to business owners.
I was talking to Ms. Perot about it today, or texting her rather. And I was talking to a store who wasn't a big store, and they were quite concerned. They did go down to the BIA and they did get their allocation, and they were quite happy with it. So for now, it's working. Dr. anticipated this perhaps 4 weeks as we get under stage 3 and try to mitigate any blip in the cases. So we will have to reassess the allotment then and see if we can support our stores at that point. So our staff is on top of it, working in conjunction with the BIA.
Yes, certainly if it's something that there's insufficient PPE available, I know there's a call right now on the province to provide additional supports to small and medium-sized businesses to have some financial resources to purchase PPE. You know, I certainly would like to see council support that concept should we fall short of PPE in our community.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. Deputy Mayor Gierzak.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say that I certainly support this direction. I think it will help to give a lot of people much more comfort in terms of getting out and shopping when there's a certain amount of, call it peer pressure, to wear masks and support from that health unit, health area to wear masks. So I think it is a very strong movement to support our opening up of the economy. And as you say, we've got 30 days to see what happens, and we'll be able to reevaluate after that. Certainly, we can see the problems happening south of the border. Anything we can do to avoid that kind of a blip is going to be beneficial for our economy and our people.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay. Is there any other further business brought forward before we move into the closed session? Okay, moved by Deputy Mayor Gierzak, seconded by Councillor Hutchin, that Council Municipality Brockton enter into closed session at 8:33 in order to address a matter pertaining to a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board matter. A plan, position, procedure, criteria, and structure to be applied to any negotiation carried on to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board land disposition discussion. All those in favor? Okay, motion is carried. So Fiona, what do we do today? Do we leave this or just do mute?
Yes, through you, Mayor Peabody, I'd request now that I will display a screen so that the public's aware that council is in closed session, and I'd ask council members to log off this meeting. I did send the link for the closed session meeting, and I'd ask that you log into that meeting, and we'll proceed with the closed session. If there's any members of council who have a conflict of interest in relation to an item on the closed session, then I will keep you in the waiting room and I will admit you when that item has been discussed. Thank Thank you.
I can hear you, but I can't see you anymore. Oh, there you are.
Okay,
I have a bookshelf here too. To Counselor Life, so about 140 feet of books, I'd say.
Have you read them all?
No. I do have a history of buying books with good titles to read on a sunny day somewhere.
Mayor Peabody, I believe that Councillor Lang, given the restrictions of Wi-Fi at the hospital, may not join us for this
He's not
portion.
joining us.
So I believe we should be ready to
Okay,
proceed.
moved by Councillor Hutchins, second by Councillor Lyson, that the Council of the Municipality of Brockton accepts the direction provided to staff in closed session. All those in favor? Okay, that's carried. Moved by Councillor Adams, second by Councillor Elphick, that the Municipality of Brockton authorizes the following bylaw to be read and acted, signed, sealed, numbered as followed. Bylaw 2020-83, July 14th, 2020, confirmatory bylaw. All those in favor? Carried. And adjournment. Moved by Deputy Mayor Gierzak, second by Councillor Lyson. So the Council of the Municipality of Brockton is now hereby adjourned at 9:26 p.m. to meet again on August 11th, 2020. All those in favor? Motion is carried. I hope that everybody has a good break. It's been a long haul with the 120 days of COVID. So hopefully everybody can enjoy the good summer weather, and so we can be ready for the next 6 months. Great news, as Councillor Adams pointed out, with the building permits. So we're really on track, and thank you to the staff for keeping all that growth on track. So have a good summer recess.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll stop recording and I'll end meeting for all.
Have a good evening, everyone. Take care.
Good evening.
Bye now.
Good night.